Welcome, my brothers and sisters. Take a deep breath right where you are and let your shoulders drop. I want to ask you a question that cuts straight to the heart. What is the one thing you are holding on to so tightly right now that your hands are starting to ache? Maybe it is a dream that seems to be slipping away, a relationship you are desperately trying to fix, or a breakthrough you have been begging God for night after night, only to be met with a deafening silence. We live in a world that tells us if we just worry more, run faster, and fight harder, we can force the doors of our lives to open. But the truth is, you are running on empty, exhausted from fighting a battle that was never yours to win. In the next few minutes, we are going to journey into a truth that will completely shatter your anxiety and fundamentally change the way you pray. We are going to discover why the most powerful, spirit-filled prayer you can ever utter is not a prayer of taking control, but a prayer of radical, life-altering surrender. If you stay with me until the very end of this message, you will not just find the strength to finally let go, you will walk away with a supernatural peace, knowing exactly how God is working behind the scenes of your deepest waiting. Open your heart, because God is in this place and He is about to set you free. The human struggle with letting go is deeply rooted in our innate desire for absolute control. From a psychological and spiritual standpoint, we naturally construct idealized versions of how our lives should unfold, mapping out specific timelines for success, healing, and personal milestones. We fall into the trap of believing that because we desire a certain outcome, our plan must be the definitive path to fulfillment. This creates a severe internal conflict when our reality deviates from those expectations. When God's timeline does not align with our self-imposed deadlines, or when doors close unexpectedly, our immediate instinct is often to grip tighter, mistakenly believing that increased anxiety or striving can force our desired outcome into existence. This friction arises because we confuse our limited, short-sighted human perspective with the ultimate good. We look at our immediate circumstances and demand a resolution, failing to realize that our frantic need for control is actually an expression of fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of failure, and an underlying doubt in God's sovereignty. Recognizing this conflict is the essential first step toward true surrender, as it forces us to admit that our hands are simply too small to manage the universe. Surrender within the Christian journey is fundamentally misunderstood when viewed as a sign of passivity, weakness, or defeat. In a culture that relentlessly champions self-reliance and aggressive striving, yielding your will to another feels like giving up. However, biblical surrender is an act of fierce, intentional faith and supreme spiritual courage. It requires greater strength to open your hands and release a deeply held desire, anxiety, or timeline into the unseen care of God than it does to desperately cling to it. When we surrender, we are not resigning ourselves to a cruel or random fate. Rather, we are making a conscious, proactive decision to transfer the burden of management from our fragile shoulders to the omnipotent hands of a loving Creator. It is the definitive declaration that God is entirely capable, trustworthy, and sovereign over the details of our lives. By emptying our hands of our own limited agendas, we cease fighting against the divine current and position ourselves to receive His grace. True surrender shifts our posture from a defensive stance of panic and self-preservation to an open stance of active readiness, transforming the moment of letting go into the very catalyst for supernatural peace and ultimate victory. The profound beauty of divine timing lies in the distinction between human time, Chronos, and God's time, Kairos. As human beings, we are bound by Chronos, the linear, ticking clock that measures minutes, hours, and deadlines, often breeding a sense of frantic urgency and anxiety when things do not happen according to our schedule. God, however, operates in Kairos, which represents the opportune, perfect, and mature moment for His purposes to be fulfilled. Trusting God's timing requires us to shift our gaze from the ticking clock to His eternal perspective, understanding that He sees the entire tapestry of our lives while we only see a single thread. When we experience seasons of waiting or apparent delays, it is not an indication of His absence or indifference, but rather a period of divine orchestration. During these hidden intervals, God is actively working behind the scenes, either preparing our character to handle the weight of the coming blessing or aligning circumstances to ensure that the outcome brings maximum glory to Him and ultimate good to us. Embracing Kairos means resting in the quiet assurance that God is never early, never late, and perfectly precise in everything He does. The spiritual principle of open hands dictates that our capacity to receive God's next blessing is entirely dependent on our willingness to let go of what we are currently grasping. When we tightly clutch our past hurts, specific expectations, or self-made deadlines, our hands become structurally incapable of holding anything else. We often pray for new grace, fresh opportunities, and divine intervention. Yet we approach God with clenched fists, refusing to release the very things that are blocking our progress. Clinging to a specific outcome or a painful season acts as a spiritual barrier, closing our posture to the expansive and transformative provisions He desires to pour into our lives. True faith requires us to voluntarily open our fingers and offer up our most guarded desires, trustingly laying them down at the altar. This act of emptying is not a loss, but a critical prerequisite for spiritual growth, as God cannot fill a hand that is already full of its own agenda. By relaxing our grip and presenting open hands to the Creator, we signify absolute trust, shifting our internal state from desperate self-preservation to a vulnerable, expectant readiness that allows Him to freely replace our limited plans with His infinite best. The Gethsemane Pattern provides the ultimate spiritual blueprint for yielding our desires to the Father, demonstrating that true faith does not demand its own way, but submits to a higher authority. In the shadow of the olive trees, facing the unimaginable weight of the cross, Jesus engaged in a raw, deeply emotional struggle that mirrored the fullness of human agony. His prayer, "Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me, yet not my will but yours be done," establishes a profound framework for every believer navigating a difficult season. This pattern teaches us that it is entirely acceptable to express our human desires, fears, and preferences to God, but that our prayers must ultimately conclude with a posture of absolute surrender. By uttering these words, Christ deliberately aligned His immediate physical reality with the Father's eternal redemptive plan, choosing the pain of divine purpose over the comfort of self-preservation. Embracing the Gethsemane pattern means acknowledging that our perspective is fundamentally limited by time and circumstance, while God's vision spans eternity. When we follow this divine model, we actively trade our short-sighted agendas for the perfect, sovereign wisdom of a Creator who knows exactly what we need. The supernatural byproduct of true surrender is a profound peace that defies human logic and transcends our immediate circumstances. When we genuinely trust God's heart, the agonizing anxiety of trying to figure out the when and how of our situation completely dissipates, replaced by a quiet, immovable confidence. This is the peace that guards our hearts and minds, anchoring us firmly even when the storm around us continues to rage. It is not a peace born from having all the answers or seeing a clear resolution on the horizon, but from knowing exactly who holds the future. By intentionally shifting the heavy burden of our lives off our own shoulders and placing it entirely onto the sovereign capability of God, we are liberated from the exhaustion of self-preservation. We find rest in the unwavering theological truth that He is actively working all things together for our ultimate good, even when the current path feels painful or confusing. This divine peace transforms our internal landscape, changing our frantic cries for control into a silent, expectant rest, allowing us to walk through seasons of waiting not with dread, but with a steady, hopeful joy. In conclusion, my beloved, letting go is not the end of your story. It is the exact moment God takes the pen to write the next glorious chapter. When we step off the throne of our own lives and allow the King of Kings to lead, the heavy chains of anxiety, striving, and fear simply fall away. We exchange our fragile, short-sighted plans for an eternal, unshakable purpose. As you leave this sanctuary today, carry this truth deep within your spirit. The hands that hold your future are the very same hands that flung the stars into space and endured the cross for your soul. You can afford to relax your grip. You can afford to trust His timing. Step out into the week ahead with your head held high, walking not in the panic of the world, but in the supernatural peace of a child of God who knows that the Father has already worked everything out for your ultimate good. May the Lord bless you and keep you as you walk out this journey of holy surrender. I wish you the absolute best of luck, abundant favor, and divine strength in every area of your life. May His presence be your constant companion, and may your faith be renewed with every passing day. Thank you so much for your time, your open hearts, and your beautiful, listening spirit today. Go in grace and peace.